In the bustling bar, Lyra and Tyrus leaned close, their conversation muffled by the din around them. A stumbling, clearly inebriated human male wove his way through the crowd, finally reaching their table. His words slurred as he attempted a clumsy compliment, and the two feline aliens exchanged disgusted glances before Lyra cut him off with a sharp laugh, shooing him away with a flick of her hand. He staggered off, barely noticing as Lyra chuckled, casting a withering look his way. Humans, she scoffed. Weak, pathetic creatures, and dumb as rock, every last one of them. She turned to Therese, her whiskers twitching in amused disdain. I don't know how they've made it this far. Tyrus's expression wavered, her ears perking thoughtfully. I don't know. I heard they had something to do with liberating Volra from Drakari rule. Could just be rumours, but it's odd how often I hear about humans showing up in unlikely places. Lyra let out a dismissive snort. Please, I heard it was just some bumbling traders who couldn't even handle their own ship and crashed there. Just then, Ryex strode into the bar, catching their words. Her eyes flashed with a hint of mischief as she slid into the seat across from them. If humans were involved, she said with a smirk, I'd wager the story's true. I served with one a few years back. A human marksman who, well, let's just say she could surprise even the best of us. Both Lyra and Therese's eyes widened, their curiosity piqued. You, working with a human? Lyra repeated incredulously. You can't be serious. Ryex leaned back with a wry grin, fingers tapping her glass as she began. Oh, trust me. By the end, even our Commander Jarek was thanking her. But don't take my word for it. Let me tell you exactly how it happened. Ganoth 7 loomed up through the viewport, all storms and spikes and misery. Of course, it would be. No one would choose a place like this. That research facility we were headed for was a fortress buried in a wasteland, just waiting to eat anyone who didn't have the tech to survive it, which was why the sight across from me was so laughable. There sat Archer Hawke, Earth's finest marksman, with an antique rifle in her lap. And not just any old rifle, no, it had no AI guidance, no auto-lock, not even a thermal scope. Just a set of basic sights and a wooden grip. I leaned forward, eyeing the rifle and then her, like maybe I hadn't understood what I was looking at. Archer, please tell me you've got a better weapon stashed somewhere, I smirked, loud enough for the whole squad to hear. Or are you planning to take down the enemy by scaring them? Talyn, seated beside me, let out a low, rumbling laugh. She'll be using that thing as a club soon enough. If the planet doesn't eat her, her weapon might break from a strong breeze. His ridged neck vibrated as he chuckled, his fanged mouth open wide. Archer met my stare, calm as anything, just as unbothered as she'd been since we left base. It's done the job so far, she said, quiet and steady. I rolled my eyes. Oh, sure, I said, voice dripping with sarcasm. When you're hunting your little earth animals, maybe. But this is Ganoth 7. The planet itself is hungry, human. And what are you going to do when some six-legged armoured thing charges you? Take a deep breath and line up your iron sights. The laughter filled the cabin, and even Jarek, our squad leader, cracked a smile. He hadn't been thrilled about Archer's presence either, which, frankly, gave me some satisfaction. She was some last-minute addition from the higher-ups, as if we needed a liability on a mission like this. I noticed his 4 eyes narrow on her, a mix of annoyance and distrust plain on his face. Listen up, Hawke, Jarek said, his voice hard and sharp. We're here for a single purpose. Retrieve that prototype from the research facility. We're not babysitting Earth's latest curiosity project. Carry your weight, or we'll leave you behind. Got that? She didn't even blink. Understood, Commander. The way she said it made my fur prickle, like she didn't have a single doubt about her chances here. Maybe she just doesn't get it, I muttered to Talyn. Poor thing thinks her little tricks will be enough here. I turned to her one more time, ready to throw out one last insult. Hey, human, I drawled, are you planning to take down Ganoth 7's most dangerous criminals by politely asking them to surrender? Or maybe you'll get them with a bedtime story. The cabin burst into fresh laughter, and even Jarek gave a low chuckle. But just as I opened my mouth to add another jab, an alarm blared through the ship, turning our laughter into a tense silence. The lights flickered to red, and the ship jolted violently. The pilot's voice crackled over the intercom, strained and full of tension. Enemy missile inbound. Brace for impact." The ship rocked as the missile struck, throwing me sideways in my seat. Warning lights flashed and the engines howled as a second blast slammed into us, sending us spiraling toward the hostile ground of Ganoth 7. Dust and debris settled around us as the last sounds of the crash faded into the thick, sticky silence of Ganoth 7. Our ship was a crumpled mess of metal, half buried in the blackened sand and surrounded by shattered supplies and twisted gear. Even as I pushed myself to my feet, blinking through the smoke, I could feel the wrongness in the air, like something had twisted our reality and left us stranded. Around me, the others were struggling to assess the damage, and I saw with dismay that some were already nursing bruises and burns. Jarek's voice barked over the comm, rough and strained. "Gather all supplies, and someone figure out why nothing's working." I grabbed my helmet, trying to run diagnostics, but it was all static. Every scanner, every piece of tech we'd loaded up for this harsh, inhospitable planet was dead. One after another, the lights on our AI-guided weapons blinked off, and my heart sank as I tried activating the plasma rifle's targeting system and got nothing. "What?" Talon muttered, tapping furiously at his own helmet, eyes widening as he realized the full extent of our failure. "What's going on here?" Jarek grimaced, scowling as he ran a hand over the nearest broken scanner. "The prototype device. Our intel said it was an EMP generator designed to counter AI-based systems." His voice was a low growl. "Guess they figured out how to use it." The words fell over us like a heavy shroud. This mission had been meticulously planned around our tech advantage, with every calculation assuming we'd be able to rely on our equipment to get us in and out of that facility. But now, with our scanners dead and our weapons useless, we were practically blind. Archer, standing a bit apart from the group, lifted her gaze, scanning our faces. Her expression was unreadable, but she seemed calm, almost expectant. "We need to gather anything that still works and keep moving," she said simply. "If the EMP device is active, they know we're here. We'll need to be on the ground soon, and they'll be coming for us." "Listen, human," I snapped, pulling together the last fragments of my patience. "We've got advanced cloaking gear, AI targeting systems, and now it's all worthless. Our entire advantage, and it's gone. We're stranded here, and now we're as useless as you, Hawke." The others muttered in agreement, morale visibly crumbling as they inspected what little was left in their gear. I glared at her, hoping to see some sign of worry or fear, but she only nodded, strapping her rifle to her back. That ancient thing still looked like it was in working condition, an irony that only made my tail lash in irritation. "Then I guess we're all on the same page now," she replied, calm as ever. "Keep moving and stay close." With nothing left but our survival kits and the unusable tech strapped to our bodies, we began our trek across the harsh, hostile terrain of Ganoth 7. The landscape was as merciless as they'd warned us, jagged rocks that tore at our armor, acidic mist drifting in patches, and grotesque plants that snapped at our legs with thick, thorned vines. Jarek took the lead, though his expression was darker than I'd ever seen it, and even Talon, usually light-hearted, kept his focus on each careful step. We avoided every trace of movement, ducking low any time we sensed activity, and though the others pressed on, I could feel our morale hanging by a thread. Without our tech, every step felt risky, every sound a potential threat. The only one who seemed at ease was Archer, striding along with that ancient weapon slung across her shoulder, her eyes scanning the distance, calm and collected. And, for reasons I refused to think too hard about, I stayed close. By the second day on Ganoth 7, the others had started to wear down. Supplies were already looking bleak, ration packs growing lighter in our packs, and every step felt like a test. Without scanners or maps, we were practically guessing our way through the maze of jagged cliffs and winding trails that carved through the hostile landscape. The worst of it was the silence. The gadgets we normally relied on to scan for threats, to keep us in constant communication, were dead weight strapped to our armor, nothing but a reminder of just how powerless we'd become. As the hours dragged on, I could feel morale drop with each misstep, each dead end. A few of us muttered under our breath, cursing the planet, the mission, and every so often the human who trudged along silently at the back of the squad. But Archer Hawke didn't seem fazed by the dismal mood. If anything, she looked like she belonged on this hellish terrain, moving with a patience and calmness that none of us could muster. When we stumbled on a creek running clear water, the squad barely thought twice about filling our canteens, until Archer stopped us. "Test it first," she warned, crouching down to examine the water. We all stopped, annoyed and impatient, but as she dipped a finger in and sniffed, she explained, "The plant life here is acidic. Water sources could be just as toxic." In minutes, she rigged a makeshift filter from one of her kit's cloth strips and the charred remains of some plants, purifying the water enough to make it drinkable. We filled our canteens, and the small relief of having water made us a bit less prickly, though I barely managed a begrudging thanks. A day later, when we nearly walked into a field of thorned, snapping plants that could rip armor in half, she was the one to stop us, pointing out the distinctive, faintly purple thorns marking the plants as carnivorous. With nothing but her instincts and survival knowledge, she guided us around that field without triggering a single trap. And yet, as much as I hated to admit it, she was keeping us alive in ways that none of us could. Even Jarek, our hard-edged leader, was losing that cold impatience. He was the one who'd called her a liability back on the ship. Now, he looked at her with something like respect, watching her as she navigated the deadly landscape with a focus that none of us shared. But it was the ambush that finally cracked the armor we all wore. It happened at dusk, just as we were making camp against a cliffside. There was a flash, a glint of light in the distance. Before we knew it, the air filled with the crackle of weapons fire. Shadows moved through the rocks, swift and silent, surrounding us before we could properly react. The enemy, brutal and relentless, tore into our defences, forcing us to scatter as plasma bolts filled the air. Jarek took the lead, firing off rapid shots to hold our attackers at bay, but without AI guidance, our weapons were sluggish and imprecise. A bolt caught Jarek square in the shoulder, spinning him around and knocking him hard against a rock. He stumbled, clutching his wound, but another enemy closed in. Weapon raised for the killing blow. I barely had time to call out his name before Archer was there, moving with a speed and precision I didn't think possible for a human. She aimed down her ancient rifle and fired. A single shot rang out, echoing off the cliffs, and the alien crumpled, weapon clattering uselessly to the ground. Jarek staggered back, staring at Archer with something close to shock. She barely registered his gaze, already moving to help him. Her hands quick and practiced as she patched his wound with supplies from her kit. "Keep low," she instructed, her voice calm and unshaken. "If we can draw them into the rock crevice, we'll have cover." The others gaped at her, the awe clear in their eyes. The same woman we'd laughed at and dismissed back on the ship had just taken down a heavily armed opponent with a single perfect shot and saved our leader's life without hesitation. "Archer!" "Thanks," Jarek managed, his voice ragged. She nodded, not making a big deal of it. "Let's get to cover. The rest will catch up fast." We scrambled to follow her lead, moving deeper into the rocks as the enemy regrouped. Archer took a vantage point, her eyes sharp, hands steady as she directed our movements and called out enemy positions with uncanny accuracy. Her calm focus and steady commands gave us something to hold on to, and we found ourselves working as a unit again, our doubts and frustrations silenced by her efficiency. By the time the last enemy had fallen, our morale was something I hadn't felt since before we left base. Even I couldn't deny what I'd seen. Hawke's skill, her calm in the face of danger, had pulled us through. In that single battle, she'd proved herself, not only as a survivor, but as an essential part of our team. When the dust settled, we gathered around her, looking to her not as a human liability, but as a comrade. And as we prepared to move on, I found myself looking at Archer with a newfound respect, a feeling I knew was shared by the rest of the team. The mission was a success, thanks to the human marksman, Archer Hawke. Against every odd on that forsaken planet, she managed to pull us through with that ancient rifle of hers. We survived with only minor injuries, and the intel we secured will change the course of this conflict. The higher-ups even awarded us for retrieving the prototype, and I couldn't help but notice the glint of satisfaction in Jarek's eyes as he handed Hawke the commendation he once doubted she'd ever earn. After the ceremony, Jarek acknowledged her in front of the whole squad. "Hawke," he said, his usual gruffness softened, "we owe this one to you. Care to say a few words?" She hesitated, giving him a polite nod before addressing the team. "I'm not as good with words as my sister," she started with a half-smile, "but this was a team effort. We got it done together, and I'd go back out there with you all any day." Once the ceremony was over, I caught up to her, a reluctant respect settling in my chest. "You know," I smirked, "with some proper AI-guided weapons and our best armor, you'd be even deadlier." Hawke looked at me, her eyes glinting with that calm, grounded confidence I was just beginning to understand. "I'll pass," she replied, tapping her rifle. "I'd hate to lose my edge." She walked away, leaving me with a grudging admiration, and for the first time, a little understanding of why humans like her could change the course of any mission. You provided. Ryex finished her story, leaning back with quiet satisfaction as she took a sip from her drink. Lyra and Therese sat in stunned silence, the sneer gone from Lyra's face. Tyrese rubbed her jaw, trying to reconcile the sharp-shooting, cool-headed archer Hawke with the stumbling human from earlier. Finally, Lyra shook her head, her voice a little quieter. "So, that human? She saved your whole team, just like that?" Ryex shrugged, though a glint of respect lingered in her eyes. "With nothing but instinct and that old rifle. Turns out, humans don't need all that fancy tech to get the job done." Tyrese leaned back, thoughtful. "Guess they're more than just blundering traders after all." Lyra shot Ryex a sidelong glance. "Next time a human stumbles up to me, I might think twice before dismissing them." Ryex took another slow sip, letting her own words settle. For once, the disbelief and scoffs of her friends felt like just a memory, and one she didn't mind reliving.